Great people, how you doing today? As many of you know, I work with youth who tend to be court-issued, court-ordered, and have mental behavioral problems. So it's said. With that being said, there's a major issue as a whole affecting our country. Yes, of course, that's going to be seen as something that oftentimes is a black issue, but it also affects all of us. What is that issue? That's the school-to-prison pipeline. If you don't know what it is, you're about to learn. So this video is going to consist of a whole lot of videos that I composed filled with information about the school-to-prison pipeline. This is important for you to learn, retain, and with that being said, below are several links for you to actually go to the exact videos on YouTube and learn more about them yourself. I just put together some of the videos I felt were really good. Well, at least some of the clips that were really good. And give me some of your feedback below as well. I hope you learn a lot. And my last thing I'm going to say is, please go learn more information on your own. There's nothing worse than people learning from other people the wrong information. And for all I know, some of you may know a whole lot more about this issue than I, even though I'm in the field. I've been doing this for over 2 years and now I work with over 100 people. I would love to hear what you have to say. I would love to learn from you. So share your knowledge. Let's all be respectful and hope you enjoy it. Share it.
People often say, what's wrong with black folks? Why can't they get it together? What's wrong with Latinos? Why aren't they advancing as quickly as they should be? What's wrong with them? Studies have consistently shown for decades that people of color are no more likely to use or sell illegal drugs than whites. Yet they are arrested and incarcerated at grossly disproportionate rates. In some states, 80 to 90% of all drug offenders sent to prison have been one race, African American. And rather than asking what's wrong with them, perhaps we should ask what is wrong with us.
The school-to-prison pipeline. It's a term that describes how American kids get pushed out of public schools and into the juvenile and criminal justice systems. Basically, harsh zero-tolerance policies in schools have led to more suspensions, expulsions, and even in-school arrests.
In this country, as we all know, 3 out of 4 African American males, especially low income, will experience some form of criminal justice supervision. And there are many reasons for that.
Back in school, forget about hallway monitors. Students these days often have to deal with school police. Minor offenses that might have landed you in the principal's office back in the day can now actually lead to your arrest. Students of color and those with disabilities are disproportionately affected. Black students get expelled 3 times more than their white classmates, while a student with a disability is 2 times more likely to get an out-of-school suspension than everyone else. And it's not because these kids are just bad apples. The Justice Department found that black students got harsher punishments than their white peers for doing the same things.
Some argue that the increase in security measures is a result of rising fears about violence in schools. One example is the 1999 Columbine High School shooting. However, according to author and Hofstra University professor Alan Singer, the stage was set long before Columbine.
Our modern school system really starts in the 1920s. And the idea at the time was that it would prepare blue-collar immigrants and their children for blue-collar jobs. But by the 1960s, those jobs disappeared, and the rationale for the organization of high school and factory model no longer made sense. And as those jobs disappeared, the schools have more and more shifted to what I call prison model. So first you have the disappearance of work. And then in the 1970s, you have massive budget cuts, partly as a result of the war in Vietnam. And schools are cut back, teachers are laid off, schools become much more overcrowded, and the whole schools have become chaotic. Then you have the 1980s, you have a crack epidemic. Crack epidemic destroys communities, it destroys families, contributes to that sense of general decay in inner city communities. By the 1990s, you have private companies that are investing in prisons. You have the outsourcing of prisons to these private concerns. And these private concerns, they need raw material. They need the kids to make their profit. And so you have this whole justification of sending the kids to jail. You have the zero tolerance ideology emerges, and the idea behind zero tolerance is that you step out of bounds, something wrong with you, you're going to be sent to jail.
Black men are being publicly traded on Wall Street the same way you trade sugar, leather, gold, diamonds. Just like in slavery, black men are the raw resource of America.
The goal is to get bodies, to get free labor, and to generate money and commerce at the expense of whoever just happens to get caught into the system.
Well, with over 2 million people in jail, the US has the world's biggest prison population. But some are seeing the inside of a cell because dodgy judges are getting payback from the private sector.
2 Pennsylvania judges have made a killing out of juvenile prisons. Mark Chivarella and Michael Conahan were convicted of receiving kickbacks for more than $2 million from the developers of several private detention centers. But the real crime, according to parents, is that these judges then sent more than 5,000 children to those very facilities for crimes as small as fighting on a school bus or posting a parody of their teacher on the web.
According to Michael Denzel Smith, a fellow at the Nation Institute, while crime rates have gone down, incarceration has increased in recent years.
We are addicted to incarceration. We're addicted to the profits that come through incarceration. We're addicted to free labor, cheap labor, and the way that we produce that now is through the prison system. And so the way, when crime nationally, like the number of crimes, actual crimes being committed over the past 30 to 40 years has actually gone down in the United States. Like we're reducing the amount of crime, but the prison population exploded, in part due to the war on drugs, but in part because we criminalized more things. Like we started to criminalize homelessness, we criminalized mental illnesses, and we locked people up, and we locked them up for longer periods of time. So the prison population has exploded over this time, and we are so beholden to it as an economic force and also just a social control.
Through the juvenile courts and the adult criminal justice system, the United States incarcerates more of its youth than any other country in the world. In 2002, approximately 126,000 juveniles were incarcerated in youth detention facilities alone. Approximately 500,000 youth are brought to detention centers in a given year. This data does not reflect juvenile trialed as adults. Around 40% are incarcerated in privatized for-profit facilities.
The case of the 2 Pennsylvania judges in bed with local private prisons could be just the tip of the iceberg. A recent report revealed America's largest prison corporations pour hundreds of thousands into the campaigns of governors, state legislators, and judges in the hope of advancing their agenda. And it seems to be working. The number of private prisons in the U.S. is growing rapidly.
All of their money, every penny they get, is a taxpayer dollar that they get from the government. And so what they do is they get the money from the government to house prisoners, then they turn around and spend some of that money by giving it back to the politicians that push the laws and the policies that lead to both more people being incarcerated and more people being incarcerated in private prisons. So it's almost a money laundering of tax dollars.
They're making contributions to judges in electoral politics. It's sort of like a closed circuit. You're making contributions to people who are making the laws, and then you're making contributions to people who are enforcing the law.
With the number of prisons, up goes the number of prisoners. The U.S. has around 2.3 million people behind bars.
We've seen prison populations pretty consistently over the last 3 decades can move up a couple % a year. And, unfortunately, as a citizen, that's not the most exciting statistic. However, when you look at it from a business model perspective for the private operators, it's clearly good news.
The good news for the prison business turned into a nightmare for thousands of underage victims of the 2 judges in Pennsylvania.
There's an incentive in private industry, obviously, to make money. That's what private industry is for. So there's an incentive to have more prisoners, an incentive to keep those prisoners incarcerated for longer periods of time. There's really no incentive for rehabilitation, the incentives are reversed.
The so-called Cash for Kids case in Pennsylvania showed just how reversed the incentives can be and raised the question, with judges actually interested in sending people away for longer terms and keeping their benefactors' private prisons full, what justice can one count on?
What they'll do is they'll target kids, they'll pick them up for small offenses. And what happens is kids will then plead guilty to the small offense, a small felony, and they'll be let go. But what kids don't understand is that once they've pleaded guilty to this small offense and they're allowed to walk, they could then get picked up for virtually anything and they could be sent back to jail. They don't even have to prove they did anything, they just have to prove they violated their parole. So what you have is a lot of kids just marking time in these cells who are marking time because they fell into the trap. They fell into the trap, they pleaded guilty to something, and I'm not saying they didn't do it, but they pleaded guilty to something, they thought they were allowed to walk, they thought they would be given another chance, they're just being set up. Now in New York, the jails are full of kids who then get picked up on the second offense. But it's worse in other states. In the old Confederacy, kids are talked to about pleading guilty. They plead guilty. Not only are they at risk of getting picked up again because they're sent down to the same communities where they were before, but now they lose their citizenship rights. They lose their right to vote. They will never regain it.
As a person who works in the social work field, a lot of my clients tend to be court issued. And I had so many kids that have been locked up in the detention center for 2, 3, 4 months straight. And you have to understand what that does to a child's psyche, especially those who are adamant about the fact that they didn't do it. They were innocent. Now, I tend to tell my youth not to tell me too many details because of the things that go on with the courts. I don't want to be caught in. But they still tend to say, I'm innocent. Because, you know, people always want to fight for their innocence. But don't give me details is what I say. And in the process of them saying they're innocent, they say, I'm going to take the plea. I've been in here too long. I can't do it no more. I want to go home. I want to see my mom. I want to eat regular food. I don't want to eat this crap anymore. Instead of give in. And in the process of giving in, they don't realize that they have now put themselves in the system for something that I don't know, but I believe that they may possibly be innocent for it. But the system makes it sound so great sometimes because they'll tell you if you don't, you're going to go to court. And if you go to court, the things that are going to possibly happen is you will be sent to DYS, the actual jail for youth. And they have lost so much hope for the justice system and that process that they just don't believe that they will be given a fair due process.
When students are forced out of school for disruptive behavior, they are usually sent back to the same neighborhoods, low income, with no to little resources, stigmatized and falling behind in their studies.
They are a symptom of the problem, the breakdown of communities, and the failure of our society to address it. I don't believe schools are going to address all the problems of society. What schools do is they reinforce the society and they prepare people for entry in a society which has no jobs. So you have young people coming out of inner city communities, going to schools, going to boarding schools, getting suspended for inconsequential actions, being talked to badly by security guards. So what ends up happening is they get suspended, they stop coming. Well, in these communities, which are often in decay, the gangs become their family. The gangs become the employer of last resort. The gangs help to protect kids from other gangs. So what ends up happening is the gangs are not the cause. The gangs are the symptom of societal decay in inner cities.
They underemploy you, even under the president that looks like you.
Indicators are telling us that it's headed downhill.
You're a walking, talking uranium for these people. You're a stick of gold with mouth and eyes and ears.
Statistically, if a black boy cannot read by the time he finishes the 5th grade, there's a 75% chance that he will be a criminal by the age of 25. It is the relationship between miseducation and criminology.
They've done studies where they found that 70 to 80% of people that are incarcerated are at different levels of illiteracy. So there you know that if you're illiterate in 3rd or 4th grade, then it's very likely that you'll be in prison. So you mean to tell me that people that decided on where to build a prison or how to build a prison or when to build a prison didn't look at the research? They had to look at something. So, of course, I mean, if I was trying to make millions of dollars off private prisons, I would be looking at, oh yeah, we're gonna have a lot of prisoners this year because nobody can read.
It involves a confrontation at an elementary school in Florida. A student ended up in handcuffs, a student who is just 5 years old. Here's NBC's Kerry Sanders.
Jaisha, you need to calm down. You need to do it now.
It's what grabs the attention. 3 police officers handcuffing a 5-year-old schoolgirl.
I was made to believe that Michael saw a police officer and attacked a police officer just on sight.
Is that what happened?
That is not what happened.
Thelma found out what did happen when she obtained this police report. Lieutenant Frank Gordo says he placed his hand on Michael's and the boy pushed my hand away in a batting motion, pushed papers off the table, and kicked me in the right knee. When Michael wouldn't calm down, the officer cuffed his hands and feet with zip ties and took him to the Stockton Kaiser Psychiatric Hospital. Michael was cited for battery on a police officer.
I didn't know until 2 weeks later that my son was zip tied for over 2 hours.
And so I think that for African Americans to have freedom, to truly be free, we've got to embrace ownership and other forms of educational economic empowerment. Because when you walk away from education and you walk away from economic responsibility, you are walking right back into the hands of slavery, and that's something that we don't want to do.
They take the same dudes that get snatched out of your neighborhoods for bogus drug charges, nonviolent drug charges. They put them on work camps, and they have to clean the side of the highways and the exits now. Now, this not only happens at a much reduced rate that you would have to pay if you were paying a fair labor, unskilled labor. Not only that, you'd have to insure them. You'd have to give them a city pension. We wipe all that out by using slave labor, paying these men pennies on the dollar, and then forcing restitution, most of which never makes it back to a victim, but just makes it to these mysterious court calls to keep the system running. So it is indeed slavery.
So prison, we can say, is a new cotton.
Yeah, you are the cotton. Right now, you the cotton brown.
Oh, man.
What if, in fact, you go beyond the bare minimum of providing people in prison with a basic education and provide them with a high-quality post-secondary education, much better than they ever had when they were kids? What if, in fact, you created innovative college programs in every single jail and every single prison all over America, so that you can, in fact, turn car thieves and robbers and drug dealers into engineers and entrepreneurs who can take their critical thinking skills to solve the most vexing problems in America, including mass incarceration and breaking the intergenerational cycle of poverty. What if, in fact, we use those resources that we use today to build more prisons, and also to pay companies to run prisons, to divert those resources to be put into the prisons that focus on technology and knowledge so that when they get out, they can be prepared for the 21st century? And what if, instead of looking at prisons as a revolving door of punishment, we saw prisons as an on-ramp of opportunity so that our communities can be renewed all over this country?